This is Viewed and Reviewed, the monthly show where I review every film and TV show that I've viewed. This month is October, so let's get straight to it, starting with The Many Saints of Newark, or Newark, however you want to pronounce it. The Sopranos are back, sort of, in this 70s set prequel focusing on Dickie Moltisanti and the crime family before the events of The Sopranos. Note that this is not a prequel you can watch before The Sopranos, because, well, there are big spoilers. Overall, I think it's good, just. It tells a decent crime story with great characters who are perfectly cast and portrayed by younger actors. Seriously, the casting here is brilliant. The problem with this film is that it's telling a story worthy of a TV show, within a 2-hour time limit. Everything feels condensed, few moments get their time to shine and breathe, just giving us the key plot details, and that's a bit disappointing. If you're a fan of The Sopranos, this is a must-watch. If not, there's a decent crime story here, but little else. Star Wars Visions Season 1. Star Wars Visions is an anthology series where each 15 to 20 minute episode is made by different Japanese anime studios. Also, the stories they tell, they're not canonical. The ideas and concepts of this show are cool and fun. The episodes that do seemingly fit into the current Star Wars canon more are the strongest of the stories, in my opinion. The stories that push Star Wars as far as it can go, bending the rules of the galaxy, are the ones I like the least. With great animation, beautiful visuals, and good voice acting, each of these episodes is at the very least interesting, with many of them leaving me wanting more. I especially liked The Duel, The Elder, and The Ninth Jedi. Check out my full review on my channel for more. No Time to Die. James Bond is back in Daniel Craig's final outing as the character. No Time to Die is an action-packed, fun, emotional experience of a film. Daniel Craig at this point has taken James Bond in fun, interesting directions, and he is now the definitive James Bond, in my opinion. The film is gorgeous, well directed, with a great score and a cool ensemble of supporting characters. I especially like the new 007 and Ana de Armas. The big problem with the film is the villain. Rami Malek does a good job, but he isn't given much to say or do. It's really disappointing. Then there's the final act, which I liked, but it did seem a little rushed, as though they were racing to the finish line and cut a bunch of scenes. This is a fun, emotional, fitting end to this era of James Bond, and if you want more, check out my full review on my channel. Midnight Mass. The latest horror series by Mike Flanagan is an interesting one. Interesting because in many ways it's not a horror series. Yet there are horrific and disturbing elements to the show, but unlike Hill House or Bly Manor, the horror is more about ideas and concepts and about establishing an uncomfortable atmosphere rather than genuine or frights. That's not a bad thing, because Midnight Mass is at times great. It explores ideas around faith, religion and indoctrination, with plenty of interpretations to be had about what the show is trying to say. I'll keep my opinions on that to myself for now. The cast is absolutely fantastic. The characters are intriguing and very well developed too. The big issues with the show are the makeup and prosthetics, and to expand on that is to spoil certain things, but I will say some of the makeup is very see-through. The other issue, and this is the big one, is the pacing. The show is very slow. There are long monologues, drawn out sequences. They all could just be trimmed down a little bit. Overall, I like this show and I think it's a must-watch for everyone. Definitely one of the best shows this year. The Green Knight. Dev Patel stars as a wannabe knight who, after accepting the challenge of the Green Knight to strike him however he can, must now find the knight and have the challenge returned. This is a slow, atmospheric film. It's also very bold and adventurous. The locations and people that Dev Patel encounters are fascinating and intriguing, with superb visuals, and in some instances, great special effects. There are moments of levity, moments of action, great acting, and more. The pacing won't be for everyone, and the simplicity of the story does mean things are somewhat stretched out. But I enjoyed this film, although the ending was a tad disappointing and underwhelming. Goliath Season 4. This is the final season of Goliath. Lawyer Billy Bob Thornton tries to take down big pharmaceutical companies, selling their addictive medications to the public. This is a good show and it comes to a good end. This season, the location is San Francisco and the show goes full on 50s noir with it. It's stunning. The use of lighting, shadows, sets and locations is fantastic. Perfectly set in the dark, ominous mood. Each of the primary characters has a good send-off and closure. The new quickly established themselves and fitting too, with J.K. being standouts as the brothers who established the pharmaceutical company. There are some weird dream and vision sequences, which is now been overglided. These are often a little on the nose and sometimes too vague at the same time. They're the only real weak points of this season. I like this show, not enough people watched it or talked about it, but I'm glad it got a good ending. The Guilty. Jake Gyllenhaal stars as a cop who, after an incident at work, must now serve as a 911 call operator. Only on this night, he must help resolve an abduction, working all the angles and getting increasingly more frustrated with the twisting turn of events. For a film set in a single location with minimal characters, this is a decent one. It's clear that the pandemic was an obstacle here, or a challenge to overcome. Sadly, the idea and concept of the story really struggles to stretch out feature length, with the final half an hour losing some of its momentum. Jake is great in the lead role, really giving the character depth and layers, and the way information is presented to us is really smart and well done as well. There is a good story here, with cool twists and surprises, but its pacing does struggle because the idea just isn't big enough. Billions Season 5. Billions Season 5 is a tough one because most of it was filmed prior to the pandemic, and then the final few episodes were filmed during the pandemic. That means that at a certain point, the look of the show, and in some instances the cast of the show, changed. It's weird and at first not very well explained. They do eventually write the pandemic into the show, but it comes a little too late. I mean, all of a sudden, characters are talking via phones and laptops without explanation. Something they never did before this season. Then, after this becomes weird, clear that it's because of the pandemic. The explanation should have came first. What results is a great first 2/3 of a show. It's Billions at its best, business as usual, but following that it's Billions trying its best to tell a story with severe limitations. Luckily it does come to a very satisfying conclusion that left me wanting more. I liked this season overall, but there were a couple of episodes here and there that left me scratching my head, and the pandemic really impacted things quite a bit. Scream! Yeah, Scream! I hadn't seen this film until now. I had, however, seen Scary Movie, and quite frankly my mind is just blown. I had no idea Scary Movie was essentially a remake of Scream. I knew it was a spoof, but the plots are nearly identical, albeit with different endings. Anyway, I was not a huge fan of this. Is it a comedy? Yeah, okay, I get it, but the comedy isn't that smart and the constant movie references are a bit annoying. Is it a horror? Yeah, I suppose so, but the comedy takes the horror away, so the horror doesn't land that well. The cast is really impressive though. There are a lot of big names who weren't big names at the time, of course. I totally get what people like about this film. I just think it might have been better if it toned things down a bit and took itself a little more seriously. But then, of course, it would just be another slasher film. Marvel's What If Season 1. Marvel's What If Season 1 is the first real misstep and missed opportunity of the MCU. This is an anthology series set in the MCU multiverse, focusing on alternate versions of Marvel characters we already know and love. Some of the stories and concepts are cool and interesting, others not so much. The big problem is that this is part of the MCU, it's canonical, and yet there is absolutely nothing in it that affects the MCU. Why make this canonical if none of it matters? Top it off with the fact that each story is short, with characters who often don't last long, and you have a show that is fun, but also a little pointless. I don't care about any of the stories because they don't matter, and I don't care about any of these characters because they're not the versions of the characters I've spent the past 15 years with. And I'm really not a fan of the art design and look of the show either, which is a real big problem. Anyway, go watch my full review for more on this one. It's not all negative, it's just that the negatives really stand out more. Muppets Haunted Mansion. The Muppets are back, and this time things are getting spooky as they take on the Haunted Mansion. This is a fun, enjoyable little story. Little being the key thing here because Gonzo and Pepe enter the mansion and must stay the night to win something. I can't remember what that is. That's on me, not the special. The guest cast and appearances are really good and fun. The musical numbers are catchy and enjoyable, albeit brief, and the realization of the mansion is cool too. But, like I said, it's short. I feel like this could have added some depth to the story and the characters, and they would have had a decent Halloween-themed movie rather than a 45-minute TV special. As it is, I enjoyed this, it was really fun, but it also just felt a little throwaway. Ted Lasso Season 2. The second season of Ted Lasso was a significant step down from the first. The problem this season is that a distinct lack of focus. There isn't a story. Instead, it's about the characters who very subtly evolve throughout the season. Too subtly, in fact, because at times it feels like the show is going anywhere. I want to make it clear, this is a good show, maybe even a great show, but this season could have been better. The emphasis on mental health and personal well-being and attainment was very well done throughout the season. However, the show also dives much more into campy, indulgent territory when it comes to soppy, emotional storytelling. It's too feel-good. The writers and directors know what they're doing and they're not hiding it. It's a problem mainly because they keep doing it over and over and over again. Each time an emotional story or moment appears, it's overshadowed by the prior one because they just keep repeating themselves, just sometimes with different characters. This season is funny, with great characters, and it's very well made overall, but there were too many episodes, a lack of a clear story, and an overindulgence on emotional elements this season. Halloween Kills. From all lovey-dovey, emotional, to haunting, frightening, and bloody, it's Halloween Kills, the sequel to the 2018 reboot, which is also a sequel to the original Halloween. This is not a good film. I can't stand here and say such a thing. However, I really enjoyed it. I like the thrills, the action, the violence, the comedy, and the absurd nature of it all. It's very fun. The score is great, doing a good job at setting the tone and highlighting some of the epic moments. The deaths and the violence are brilliantly portrayed, just showing us enough to cause disgust and horror. There are some odd creative choices, like sidelining Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah, I suppose that's a bit of a spoiler, I guess, but she's barely in the film. She's not even the main character. Then there are big leaps in logic with some stupid characters. There's just a lot that left me scratching my head. The film very much feels like an extended middle section of a larger story, and amidst all the violence and the scares, the message of the film gets lost. What's the film actually about? Mob mentality? A serial killer? The film tries to say stuff but fails to say anything. This isn't the scariest film I've ever made either, it's not the smartest by a mile, and it lacks a definitive purpose or message, but it is fun, if you just accept what it is, a classic goofy slasher film. Squid Game Season 1. From one killing spree to another, more quirky and more original killing spree. It's Squid Game. Squid Game is great. It's a South Korean thriller survival show where debt-ridden people must compete against one another in a series of children's games with deadly consequences. The show oozes creativity and originality. Yeah, there are similarities to the Hunger Games and Battle Royale and more, but the sets, the costumes, the world, the whole idea of the competition is all really well crafted and constructed. The show does a good job at making you care about the key characters and making you hate characters you're supposed to hate. It's just really, really well made. Add on tons of twists and surprises, some darkly comedic moments and some surprisingly emotional moments too. This show is a must-watch. We don't know for certain if there will be more, but judging by how popular and successful it is, I think we might. Either way, this is a great season of TV. Venom. Let There Be Carnage. The sequel to the smash hit Venom is here. Whether we want it or not. This will probably be a short, ranty one. If you liked the first Venom film, this is basically more of that. This is yet another Sony film pretending it's part of the MCU, and probably causing confusion amongst filmgoers not in the know. Just know that if you support this film by going to see it, You are risking Spider-Man's future in the MCU because Sony might start thinking they can do it on their own and take the character back. So, you've been warned. Anyway, I didn't like Venom Let There Be Carnage. I thought it was about as good as the first one, but with better action scenes. Only Murders in the Building Season 1. There's a theme of depth this month, and that continues with this thriller comedy mystery series co-created by Steve Martin. It's Only Murders in the Building. This is one of the best shows this year. It's so fun and endearing, with a carefully crafted and detailed mystery at its core, and well realised characters with their own quirks. It's well shot, well written, well paced, well acted. The three leads are brilliant, each bringing their own elements to the show. This is a show that left me wanting more at the end of each episode. It does a fabulous job at leaving us on cliffhangers, twists and surprises and reveals. It's not all comedy either. There's an equal amount of drama, heart, emotion and murder mystery thrills in there too. It's just great. Go watch this. The Last Duel. Speaking of mysteries and crimes, The Last Duel is the latest Ridley Scott epic about a rivalry, a possible rape, and the duel that followed. The Last Duel is good. Its only real flaw is that its pacing and structure. And that's not entirely a bad thing. The story is told in 3 chapters, with each chapter recounting the story from a different perspective, culminating with the final duel. It allows the viewer to wonder and then determine what really happened. Although there are a lot of expressions, camera movements and progressive elements in there revealing what the film is, just to nudge you in the right direction. Speaking of direction, this is Ridley Scott showcasing his skills. The way he focuses on certain moments, a facial expression, a reaction, and action, it's brilliant, really well done. The cast of characters are well realized and brilliantly portrayed. The sets, the costumes, the effects are great too. The film is at times brutal and tense. It makes you care for certain characters and despise others. Again, it's just the pacing. The film is long and the chapter structure means it constantly starts, so the momentum dips at times, enough to lose interest for just a moment. But I like this film quite a bit. Dave Season 2. Changing the mood and tone quite severely now, I turn to Dave Season 2. This was okay, and that's disappointing. This season really emphasized Dave and his relationship with other people, highlighting just how not good of a person he is. And that's the biggest problem with the show. Dave, the main character, also known as Little Dicky, is the worst thing about this show. He's not a good person, and yet the show is constantly trying to redeem him, constantly trying to explain his acts and words, but it never works. Gator, one of the supporting characters, is the heart and soul of this show and the best thing about it, but he is so often relegated to a bit part here and there. If this was all about him, the show would be much better. Then the show tries to go weird and psychological, exploring just what makes Dave tick. Sometimes it's smart, sometimes it's dumb. It also emphasizes the music more, which is disappointing, unless you really like his music. At times you really have to be a fan of Lil Dicky's music to like this show because it's really just likes showing you what he does. Personally, I'm not a fan of his music. This is a TV show, not a music video. So focus on the TV show elements. Dune 2021. From something comedic and energetic to something much more dramatic and dry. It's the 2021 version of Dune. In certain regards, Denis Villeneuve's Dune is a masterpiece. A science fiction epic with warring factions, well-realized world, characters and technology. The visuals and the score are fantastic. Undoubtedly one of the best looking films ever made. The problem with the film, and its only real problem, is that it isn't finished. This is only the first half of the book, so it doesn't have a great ending and its pacing is odd. The story of the film ends in the middle of the actual story and, well, that's weird. If the film was released in a full, complete 5-hour form, or with part 2 being much closer to release, it would have been a bit better or more acceptable. But right now this just feels unfinished and very much a tease. Because the third act of this film isn't supposed to be the third act, the pacing loses momentum. The energy levels drop, and the story suffers at the back end of things. It's a slow film, but it struggled to keep me interested the longer it went, although there were some action scenes thrown in there to help things a bit. I like this film a lot. I enjoyed it, it's a great deal, but I wanted more. Check out my full review on my channel if you want more. The final film, a way to dispatch this video, is the latest Wes Anderson film, The French Dispatch. This is a Wes Anderson film for Wes Anderson fans. Now, sadly for me, I am not a Wes Anderson fan. I really love his use of sets, costumes, editing, cinematography and production. He's a master of his craft that way on. But when it comes to his stories and humour, it just doesn't vibe with me. But some people will absolutely love this one. There are 3 short stories in this. One about an imprisoned artist, which I liked quite a bit actually. One about a revolution, which I did not like. And one about a kidnapping, which was okay and had some fun moments. Overall, a mixed bag. But if you like Wes Anderson, it'll be a must watch. And guess what? That's October viewed and reviewed. If I had to recommend just one film, it would be Dune, so long as you can go and see it in IMAX or at the very least. Also check out Only Murders in the Building. I would not recommend Venom Let There Be Carnage. Just realise what you might be risking if you support that film. It could really impact another franchise and not necessarily in a good way. But anyway, that's viewed and reviewed for October. I will be back next month for, November's viewed and reviewed. Until then though, why not subscribe to my channel to get more content like this? And follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_GrantBurton for all my thoughts and opinions, reviews and pretty much anything else, as I get it, at @the_GrantBurton. Until next time though, thanks for watching.